Well, let me try one more thing. Um, check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Can you hear me now? Okay. Hello, everybody. Let's go with this while we can. I am showing up on my. Okay, I'm showing up with a audio signal finally in my studio. Well, that was a good 5 minute lead in there. It's happening all over YouTube and Facebook. Um, it's weird because all my stuff worked not 5 minutes before when I tested everything. And then all of a sudden I go live and everything's out and I've got to run and get the emergency headphones with the speaker. So Pat Tolliver, thank you for joining. Um, and we're going to have Chris is going to come up as always, and we're going to have another guest. We were going to have two other guests. My friend Apollo was going to be joining us tonight to react to a couple of videos, but his wife reminded him that he had promised her a date night, and that always takes precedence when you're married if you don't want all your shit burn up in a bonfire at the end, um, allegedly. So we'll have Chris, and we've got one more guest. And if somebody else wants to hop up, um, go ahead and do so here in the next few minutes. I'm going to run through a couple of things real quick, headline wise, that just going to bring up, and starts out with a headline from um, who is this from? Headline from the Stock Dork. Putin allies suggest U.S. civil war would benefit the world. Um, we got to always remember that Henry Kissinger said the only thing that's stopping a one world order is the strong United States. So weakening the United States as far as a global scale approach is not that. It's not thinking outside the box. It's just what's happening. Russia's BRICS surprise expansion plans set a new global agenda, and that agenda is to devalue the United States dollar. Um, our next headline: inside Mexico and Canada's bid to ditch the U.S. dollar. Um, how BRICS doubled in size. And hang on, didn't anticipate that coming up. Um, how BRICS doubled in size. There were um, four new countries that joined the BRICS alliance. Iran formally joined, the Saudi Arabian government formally joined, and there were two others. And it's not getting talked about at all, but it is a major move to devalue the U.S. dollar by the petrodollar, by utilizing oil. And as we've often said on here, it all comes back to oil. Um, let me see if there's okay. I've got that ready for that, and if we have time, we will do that. New Epstein documents have dropped, and we'll be talking about those in an upcoming episode, as well as the Supreme Court is now going to be um, Supreme Court is now going to be hearing the case of Donald Trump and whether he should remain on the ballot for the upcoming election. They're going to hear the challenge from um, the challenge from Colorado, which will impact the challenge in Maine. And say hello to my two guests. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got
Yes.
you, Barry.
All right, all right. Well, in the middle, right here in the middle, in the blank spot is pink flamingo. Now um, you might have seen pink flamingo's name in the chat, and if I remember right from the emails, um, you're a nurse or you're in the medical profession, right?
Yes, that's correct. I'm a retired nurse practitioner.
Okay. All right. So you're not in the government, you're not in counterterrorism or the
Oh,
military.
gosh, no.
Okay, so you're going to represent you're going to represent the public, if you will. Um, and I just ran through some brief headlines there. I hope you heard them both. Chris, you have anything before we get started here with the videos? Anything about Saudi Arabia joining BRICS?
I told you, like, that's a game changer right there. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, with Saudi Arabia joining BRICS, they're aligning themselves with Iran, Russia, China, right? UAE, all these other
South
countries.
Africa.
Yeah, right. India. So what they're like I said, they're really trying to get rid of U.S. dollar and get rid of the United States. They're gonna isolate us, put us on the island all by ourselves, and the United States is gonna collapse. Just
We've been
watch.
talking about it for 2 years. How would it happen? Um, you got to isolate the United States, and the best way to do that's through devaluing the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And and nobody's talking about it. But unfortunately, um, on top of everything else, that's what it sure looks like is going on.
Not sure. Looks like that's exactly what is going on. Like you know, we've been talking about this, like you said, for the past 2 years, and people I don't think really been paying attention. But now everything that we've been talking about is coming to fruition. You see,
Yeah.
um,
And we go back almost we go back over 3 years on talking about Civil War. You were on with the game designer. We had a similar
yes,
situation. You were
yes,
on with
exactly,
and
exactly.
talk and he was spot on in how things were going to end up playing out. He was just 4 years ahead of his time.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
the whole thing about it is with this bricks, and I really want to emphasize this. Um, they're really out to ruin the United States. They really are. I mean, we've been on top for such a long time, right? And any, as you know, what goes up obviously has to come back down. That's just the laws of physics, right? You throw
Every
something up,
empire will fall.
exactly, right? And now it's just
Yeah.
the time. Now it's just the time for the United States to come down. That's all it is. Well, right now, don't get me wrong. Right now, we're still pretty much a superpower. All right, we really are. But we're slowly on our way back down. We really are.
I don't think the rest of the world together could beat us militarily if we unleashed everything. I think the only way
Well,
they can take us down is by not firing a shot, by China potentially releasing some toxins, if you will, through their biochemical labs that they've built around the United States,
well,
and
you know what?
devaluing the dollar and getting us to go to war with each other.
And you know that's that's the thing. But you see what happened with North Korea shooting those 200 rockets,
I was
and
about to say North Korea shot over 200 missiles at one of the two South Korean islands across the not a bay, but it's across the ocean.
right. So as I said, those are all BRICS countries. You see,
Hmm.
and and like I said, we can only fight at best a two front war. At past. We can't
without
do
using our nuclear capabilities.
right if it even comes to that. And I think when I think last time we spoke about Russia and Ukraine, I told you the whole thing about it was them draining the United States for its money, and that's the economic portion of it. And I can't emphasize this enough that economics controls all. Bottom line,
Always comes back to it.
right?
Okay,
So,
Pink Flamingo, you have any questions for either one of us on this before we're...
I don't think so. I think the thing that just concerns me is that there's nothing in mainstream media. I mean, you're not hearing anything about any of this, and more people just need to know about it. I mean, the United States, I think, is doing a good enough job of maybe tearing itself down, but it, obviously the BRICS is definitely going to be a factor as well.
Yeah, it's a much bigger and more powerful alliance than I ever thought it would be when we first started talking about it.
Yeah, I almost think it's going to be bigger than NATO, just because of the influence with the oil and the dollar and all of that as well.
Chris?
and she's correct. All right, it's definitely gonna be better than NATO. All right, they got more countries involved with NATO. Right, um, NATO is pretty much just European countries. Here you have countries spread out all over the world. You see in BRICS.
Every
So
continent.
yeah, right. So
And one of the headlines I put up was Mexico and Canada trying to figure out how to get away from the US dollar.
like I said, Barry, everyone wants to get away from the United States. Okay, they're gonna like I said, they're gonna leave us isolated, and they're gonna collapse the dollar. Just watch.
Yeah. All right. Um, the first video, let's do the first video here. This is from um, a channel called Ironclad, and the title is Acquiring Jeffrey Epstein's Infamous Little Black Book. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show the um, there's a link right down here. Pause the video and copy this link if you want to see the entire interview. We're just going to watch a small segment of it, and I'd recommend you watch the entire thing if you're interested in this. And this is what this is how he began investigating Epstein and how he came to have that little black book that he did put online through anonymous connections. I was able to have access to it for a little while, I don't know, 9 or 10 months ago, and you can go back and find that episode. But here's what he has to say.
Radar in about 2011, and I ultimately went down to Florida in 2012 and started digging into Epstein, and that's when I acquired his black book. And I brought the black book back to New York City, and I tried to get publishers to publish it and let me write an article about it. And it took me 3 years before I could get someone to publish it and let me write articles about it. It was, and that was Gawker, which has unfortunately been sued into oblivion at this point. But it's interesting. There was a grand jury in Florida that found that Epstein hadn't molested a single child. And the Palm Beach Police Department, which initiated the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, had 5 victims, underage victims, that they had statements from. And then they had people that corroborated the victims. But they knew of 17 more victims. So the Florida law enforcement and the judiciary knew of 23 Epstein victims at that point. But that grand jury only called 1 Epstein victim. And that special prosecutor Barry Kushner skewered her. So that grand jury didn't find Epstein guilty of a single count of child abuse. And the corruption has just cascaded since then.
What you're describing I would consider
Okay.
myself to be a sane person is
All right. Let's pause there. So, assuming that everything that was alleged is true, what are your thoughts?
It's just
Either
a
one
big
of you.
cover up. I think it's a big cover up. You know, Epstein had stuff on a bunch of different people, and people with power, and had enough money to keep people quiet. That's as
Chris?
far as I'm concerned.
All right. So my take on this is, yes, he had a whole lot of power, but there are people above Epstein that had more power that allowed him to actually do the stuff. You see, so
Mhm.
because you had people to actually allow him to do what he did, maybe it's obvious those are the people that cut the ties with him. You see what I'm saying? And you know, for him to get the suicide, right? Allegedly he committed suicide. I don't know how many people actually believe that, right?
Mhm.
But the bottom line is somebody who had more power than him actually ordered that to occur. You see, for
Yep.
whatever reason, I don't know. You see, so maybe he was going to expose them, who they were. You don't know. You see,
All right. Yeah. All right.
I
Let's
think
go
that
to.
makes a
Let's.
lot of sense.
It does. Yeah. Let's see what the next question is.
absolutely mind-bending.
It's mind bending, and but what's truly unfortunate is that you've got the federal government covering up child trafficking, both in the Franklin scandal and also in the Epstein scandal. The U.S. attorney for
Hold on just a second. He mentions the Franklin scandal, and the Franklin scandal is another story of power brokers, child abuse, and child trafficking. Again, the guy we're listening to is named Nick Brandt. Just for those that want to reference and check out his credibility. So I just wanted to point that out for clarity.
for the Southern District of Florida was Alexander Acosta, and that's who was ostensibly supposed to prosecute Epstein. He had a list of 32 Epstein victims. I have that list, and
Alexander Acosta, also appointed to the Trump administration.
he did not charge Jeffrey Epstein with one count of child abuse. And after he had been U.S. attorney, he was nominated to be Trump's labor secretary, and he was being vetted by the Trump administration. And they asked him, why didn't you go after Epstein? And he said, I was told that Epstein was intelligence and that it was above my pay grade and to leave it alone. So
Okay,
you have a
all
I
right.
want to pause. I want to pause there.
Okay, you know what, Barry? And see, this is what I'm seeing. Okay, maybe there was a rift between him and his handlers, right? If this guy was actually intelligence, he is a handler. He has to report back to whomever, you know, he's working for. You see what I'm saying?
You're talking about Epstein?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So who knows? Maybe him and the handler or handlers were like, you know what? I'm tired of this and I'm tired of you. And maybe they just, you know, parted ways. But for him to do all that stuff and never get arrested and get convicted, there's obviously a split. They probably like, all right, we're cutting ties with you. You're on your own. You see?
Mhm.
So think
For
of
him,
all the
for him to have gotten away with everything that we're learning that he's gotten away with, and yet
right.
to suddenly be caught that means that he was becoming too big of a potential weight around somebody's neck,
or
and we got to put him in jail, and thus
well,
can eventually get rid of him.
right. So they had to cut ties. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
They cut ties with him. That's kind of like what I'm getting out of this here. All
Okay.
right. That for him to actually end up committing suicide allegedly, or that's what the reports say. Um, but anyway, he's deceased. Okay. Now he can't say anything.
Dead men don't talk.
Right. So if he was working intelligence, he can't sit there and say who he's working for, what he was doing, and how all this came into play. You see?
Okay. If he was working intelligence, and again, I through my sources, I've heard that he was working for Israel, for Israeli intelligence. And could he be also working for, while he's working for the Israeli intelligence, also a double agent working for the CIA and MK or MI6 or whoever?
Well, I really if
Or
he was
are they generally just like one? I'm an Israeli operative. My handler is an Israeli. I'm just trying to get kind of the groundwork of how it would happen if he were intelligence.
right, so there's a thing as being a double agent, right, or even sometimes a triple agent. Okay, so if he was a double agent, maybe he was working for the United States government too, or maybe even should we say the UK, United Kingdom, England, right? And you talk about MI6, you know,
Hmm.
whatever. But the bottom line is he crossed somebody somewhere along the line. This is what I'm getting out of this. For him to end up getting locked up for the way, for what happened, he pissed someone off. All right. And they cut ties with him and they left him out in the open. See?
And
And they're like,
isn't that kind of standard operating procedure in the intelligence community?
well, they'll cut ties with you once you're no longer once if you piss them off enough, you know, because you start doing stuff that okay, look, we don't want you doing this, and a lot of times, a lot of these agents will be like, I'll do what I want, and the handler will be like, no, you're not, you know, and
Yeah.
once that occurs, if that handler can't control that agent, they'll just cut them loose. They'll cut them
Right.
loose.
All of a sudden, your bank account's drained. Your passport's invalid. You're
It's
stuck
bottom line.
wherever you are, and nobody
It's
knows
pretty
who
much
you are with it. Yeah.
yeah. It's pretty much you're done. You know.
Yeah.
So whatever happens to you happens to you, and we're not going to come get you. Good luck. You know.
Pink flamingo.
That's an interesting take on this, an angle I wouldn't have thought of, but it really makes a lot of sense when you look at how all of a sudden he went from where he was at to being in jail and then dead. Makes a lot of sense.
All right. Let's go on just a little bit further here.
In the Epstein case, you have a U.S. attorney standing down from prosecuting child abuse when he has a list of 32 victims. Now, here's where it gets really mind-boggling. Constitutionally, there's only two people in the government that can tell a U.S. attorney to stand down. One is the president and one is the attorney general. That message can be delivered by a minion of the president or the attorney general, but only one of two people can tell a U.S. attorney to stand down. So that's the kind of power that was deployed to make sure that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't indicted by the feds. And Alexander Acosta has been questioned about what he had said to the Trump administration, vetting him about that Epstein was, that he'd been told that Epstein was intelligence, and he's never denied that at all.
Do you remember the first time you came across Epstein's name in your research when you were looking into these type of behaviors?
It was about 2011, I believe. And I'd spent 7 years investigating and writing the Franklin scandal, and I went as deep into a child trafficking network as someone can go. I mean, I got to one of the blackmail photographers, and I got to other people that were definitely privy to the intelligence connection and the hidden cameras. And then I found a number of victims. I had that grand jury that covered up the abuse in Omaha, Nebraska, that indicted those two kids. They had a list of 60 victims, and I got all the grand jury documentation. So I had a list of those 60 victims. And there were a lot more victims, but there was a state investigator that had found 60 victims. And my job was to find those victims. And unfortunately, and we see this with the Epstein case too, unfortunately, a lot of those kids came from very dysfunctional backgrounds.
Yeah.
And then they were repeatedly molested, and the carrot was drugs. And if they performed, they were given drugs. And then at a certain point, they would be expunged. And we saw this with the Epstein network too. At a certain point, they would be expunged because they would lose their youthful marketability. And then what you have is a severely dysfunctional young adult that oftentimes goes on to commit crimes so they can feed their addiction and thereby end up in prison or end up as felons or in some way compromise their own credibility. So it's almost a perfect system that you take these kids and really damage them, and then they will eventually go on to compromise their own credibility.
What do you think? Almost a perfect system.
Yeah, right.
You damage these kids to the point where they have no credibility, and no one would believe them if they were to testify.
Yep. So, all right, a lot of times, you'll get criminals, right? That have done so much jacked up stuff. You see what I'm saying? That they're actually not credible people, and they might be telling you the truth about exactly what's occurred. Okay, but they're just not believable. They'll be like, "Hey, look at your record. Look at what you've done. Do you think anyone's going to believe you, even though they might be telling the truth?" You see? So like they said, like, who's going to believe you? And I've seen this in law enforcement. You see?
I've seen it in politics. The what was his name? Cawthorn, the kid that was a congressman that was in a wheelchair and uh, and started talking about cocaine parties and orgies in an
Yep.
interview,
Yeah.
and within a week there's homo graphic pictures which are very discrediting to conservative Republicans out of nowhere, and now he's he's somewhere, but he's sure not in Congress anymore.
Yeah, he told me because Barry, you know what, Barry? I'm glad you said that, because when I was a cop back in D.C., I used to work major narcotics, and I only did it for a little bit, but I had a source, and he was telling me that he was giving cocaine to one of the pages for one of the senators in D.C. And I know exactly who the senator was. I know exactly who he was. And I ran it past, just to see, hey, this is what I'm getting, blah blah blah, and they're like, just let it alone. Unbeknownst to me, that was actually pretty common in DC. It's actually pretty normal, you see. So
Yeah.
the page told me that he would go and drop the the package off, you know, to the page, and the page, you know, well, hey, come on in, and they be partying, and like you said, having those parties, just like you described, you know, and they come back and be like, hey, well, this is what they're doing, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh, really? But see, unbeknownst to me, because I didn't know that's how it was.
No,
I didn't.
you're not supposed to. People aren't supposed to know that's how it is.
Yeah. See,
Yeah, yeah. The public doesn't know that's how it is. That's for sure.
yeah. So I didn't know how it was, and then it was pretty much, oh, just let it be. I was like, okay, no problem. But you see, those people aren't supposed to be touched. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the regular person like you or I, um, me, we're out there. They can touch us anytime they want. You know?
Yeah, and it doesn't
But
have to be true.
right. And the thing about, you know, these politicians or whatnot, it just seems like they're controlled. But as soon as if you piss whoever off, if you piss off who's ever helping you or in control of you, they're like, all right, I'm just gonna cut ties. And, oh, by the way, you remember you did this, and I never told. You're done.
Yeah.
You see,
Politician by
Yeah.
blackmail.
right?
Wow.
Let's go
So
on. Go ahead. You got something else?
no, that's it. So I was just telling you that, you know, that's telling the audience that, you know, to so they can see that, you know, for what it really is.
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine in your research that you came across a variety of names. What was it about Epstein that drew your attention and more scrutiny?
The cover up with the grand jury. That was a telltale sign. I've written a lot about children's issues. I started writing about children's issues in 1990. I mean, I've written about a lot of different things. I've had a freelance writing career that spanned like 30 years, but I've written a lot about children's issues, and actually, I wrote a book about I co-authored a book about lower socioeconomic children that was published in 1995. So I'm sensitive to children's issues, and then once I saw what was happening in the Franklin scandal, where these kids were getting trafficked, and then I came across other people that came to me. When you write a book like that, you become kind of like a lightning rod, and a number of people had come to me and talked about being trafficked and could I investigate. And I'm just one guy. I really, felt bad that I couldn't investigate all the allegations that came to me. But the thing that
Did either one of you have any idea child trafficking was at this scale?
No.
Well, let me say, because I travel the world, and it's been, you know, anytime we're out, it's always brought to our attention. Okay, the whole human trafficking thing it's always brought to our attention. Okay, not because when we're out, a lot of these guys, you know, military or just, you know, even tourists in general, when these foreign countries, they're really out there looking for these prostitutes. They will go to whorehouses, all right, and you know they'll sleep with these these women, teenage women. I'm not saying, you know, I don't know how old they are, but they'll do this. You see what I'm saying? And who knows? For all I know, these women could be trafficked. You see, and doing this, you know. So like I said, like anytime I'm in a foreign country, I'm always aware of what's going on. You see what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
when I was in Mali, I mean, there were girls there from all over. You see what I'm saying? I mean, girls from North Africa, girls from Sub-Saharan Africa, girls from like some. I saw some females from Russia. I'm like, what would you be doing over here? It's even worse in the UAE. You see, it's worse in the UAE. And even when I was down in Colombia, I was seeing women from like different places. I was like, why would you be here? And it was like that in the Dominican Republic too. All right. So it just, it just makes you think. Okay. Or, like, did someone send you here? Did you come on your own?
Oh yeah, or were
Like,
you promised a better life by somebody?
something. Okay. Because that's really big in Nigeria. You know that, right? So like in Nigeria, they'll send those females all over the creation to be working, for somebody in a foreign country. It's human
And
trafficking.
and it sounds like, from what we're hearing from Nick Bryant here, that our government values information over, they want to take part in it to gather the information and value that information over the innocence of children.
Yeah.
Am I
Well,
reading that wrong?
no, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. All right.
That stuck out about Epstein
No, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Keep playing it. No, keep playing it, Barry. Keep playing it.
was I felt that there were major legal aberrations that occurred in Florida. And I can remember going down there, and I'd spent 7 years on the Franklin scandal, and I didn't really want to investigate another network. I really didn't. But at that point, the media was just depicting Epstein as a lone pedophile. But then when I managed to acquire his black book, there's scores of victims in the black book as well as power brokers. And I started calling victims. And they were telling me about being flown around and also about the island. And I realized he was running a network, a very big network. And as disheartening as it was, and I knew that this was going to be very difficult for me because the Franklin scandal had been very difficult for me, and people didn't want to listen to me. And I knew that Epstein was going to be difficult. But on my first trip to Florida, I acquired the Black Book, and I thought, well, here is the Black Book. Publishers are going to take note of this. I'm not just pitching them conjecture. I've got Epstein's Black Book that has scores of victims as well as a lot of power brokers. And people, I live in the Mecca of publishing, New York City, and no one in New York City wanted to touch it until Gawker. And it took me 3 years to get it published. But when I started to call those victims, I knew that I was dealing with another large network. And actually, the network in the Franklin scandal, I think it was a larger network than Epstein's, but it had been around for, as I said, 10 to 12 years. Whereas I think Epstein had trafficked children for about 25 years. It wasn't as big.
25 years. Epstein had
Wow.
been trafficking children 25 years.
It was big,
So you're trying
but
to
it wasn't
tell
as
me,
big as the Franklin network, but it was.
Do what?
so you're trying to tell me Epstein was really an intelligence operative for whatever government for 25 years?
And the whole
For him to
time
be doing,
somehow he got from being a high school teacher without a degree, by the way, to owning an island, and nobody on Wall Street ever heard of him. Other than,
well,
I mean, they wouldn't acknowledge publicly.
so like he was doing dirt, and then someone was like, "Hey, let's talk to him." If
He'll have info.
Right, if he's doing dirt, hey, would you want to come work for us? Because if you don't, we know what you're doing. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dots coming together.
Right.
Around at least twice as long as the Franklin network.
Your book, about the Black Book came out in 2015.
Yes.
And it seems like, mainstream media initially wanted nothing to do with it. He wasn't even arrested until 2019.
Well,
But even
actually,
before,
he was arrested in 2008 initially.
I was going to say, I think I have in my notes is 2006 for sex crimes against a minor in Florida.
That's when the initial investigation started with the Palm Beach Police Department.
Yeah, my point is that it's not as if this was unknown. Somebody considers myself to be a reasonable person. I don't understand with the volume of data and the history of behavior with this individual why this was not frontline news or headline news across the United States.
Well, it made it into the mainstream media prolifically. Every mainstream media outlet in this country has talked about the Black Book. Everyone.
Yeah.
But none of them have really talked about the Black Book the way that the Black Book should be talked about. And only one publication has given me credit for putting the Black Book on the internet. You would think that when this stuff started to come out about Epstein and people realized what a resource the Black Book was, that my phone would be ringing off the hook, but there were no calls. Vanity Fair called me. That was the only publication that called me.
Well, it would seem as if they probably...
Does that seem odd to either one of you?
So, like I
makes
said,
sense.
but you know, here's the thing, all right? If he's really an agent for, they'll allow him to do all those things, okay? Because you're a criminal.
You cut out there for just a second. Can you repeat that?
But yeah, so if you're if you are an agent for, let's say, a foreign government, these are criminals. You have to understand that. Okay, these aren't like really good people. These are criminals, and you're expected to do criminal stuff because what? Birds of a feather, right? Birds of a feather flock together. You see? So if you're doing crazy stuff like he was doing, and then you start, hey, you want to hang out? Oh, sure. And then, you start to, be friend, you start to get to know these people. And then next thing you know, you find out what they're into. You might start, with drinking and then the drugs, and then it might lead into something else. You see? And now what's that? Now I've got you too. You see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I've got you. And you're messing with these kids. And I'm documenting this of who you are and what you've done. So
thus the need for a blackmail photographer. You got to have proof.
Right. You see?
Yeah. Yeah. Pink flamingo.
I think it just is disturbing to me as just a regular everyday person that so much of this was just covered up, and the guy Nick Bryant tried to put the Black Book out there when he first got it, and nobody wanted to give him any airtime for it. It was like, oh no, we know what's going on, but we just don't want people to know what's going on, and all the victims and everything that were involved. Just that's the part that's really disturbing to me. That just the big cover up of it.
Well, that's the whole cover up of it is they don't want that out because
right.
There's a bigger picture there for them.
Right.
Yeah. See what I'm saying?
Well,
so
yeah.
Why would I want that?
It's starting to come out now. So.
Right, but but at that time, why would I want what the big plan is to be exposed? That would crush everything. You see?
Right.
So if I'm trying to set a trap for people, I don't want people to know that a trap is being set for them. So them squashing that is most likely what if it, like I said, if he was actually working for an intelligence agency, they would want that squashed immediately. You see?
Yeah.
I mean, that does
So
make
you see,
sense, but it's just still pretty disgusting when you think about it.
you're right. It is disgusting, but that has no bearing on what the end state
Right.
is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the things that makes what we do here different is that we just look at it from just we try to take all the emotion out of it and detach ourselves and just look at it purely objectively from our areas of expertise and analyze these things. But yeah, for people that don't do that and see this stuff, of course it's more than obscene. Obscene's not a big enough word.
Right. It is.
All right.
But like I said, it
Many of those
ultimately
organizations
the end
likely
state and what
reported on it
Hold on.
because they felt like they.
Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine, Barry. Go ahead.
No, I didn't want to cut you off. I thought we were done there. Did you have something else?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
Had
All right.
to, and maybe to the minimum amount, as opposed to feeling like they wanted to, and really diving into what it could mean for the power structure that exists in the United States.
Yeah, Americans are very naive about their political system, and it's truly unfortunate. I've been looking at, I wrote another book. I teamed up with someone who ran a gay escort service in Washington, D.C., and we wrote a book called Confessions of a D.C. Madam, The Politics of Sex, Lies, and Blackmail. And the intelligence would use his gay escorts to compromise closeted politicians. So I've been looking at this.
Hey, Barry. Speaking of which, let me, Barry. Let me say something about that.
Yeah.
Because when I was caught back in D.C., there was an officer. There was a club that it was a club for men that had alternative lifestyles, right? And like these people would come down, these guys would come down there. It's a club for alternative lifestyles, and what they would have like baby seats in the back of their vehicles. You see, and this is what happened to one of our officers, because he ended up getting locked up over this. So what occurred is, he would see the baby seat in the back of a car, and he would run their tags, right? And he'd find out exactly, who these people are, right? And it'd come back, this person's married. Well, if you're married, what are you doing at a club that's for alternative lifestyles? So he's got that information. You see, he knows where they live, and he'd follow up, and eventually, like, he might get their phone number and give them a call and be like, "Hey, I know what you're doing down here at this club, and you're married. Could you imagine if your wife found out and he was getting money? Those people would end up paying him so
Be
he wouldn't
quiet.
tell their wives and wreck." You see? But eventually he ran to someone's like, "Well, I'm not going for this," and they told the FBI, and the FBI did an investigation, ended up locking him up. He ended up going to prison, but he was doing this for a while. So for him, saying, the prostitutes and the blackmail and all this other stuff, it reminded me of just what I just told you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Flamingo.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can say. It's like I'm really not surprised.
Are we overwhelming you?
No, not really. But I mean,
Okay.
there's part of it. I think one of the things that the guy on the video said, that Americans are naive about their government. That is so true. It is so true. Americans have absolutely no idea what's going on in their government. And I feel like that people overseas have better idea what's going on in our government than we do, which is really sad.
Chris, is
Yeah,
that
well,
probably true?
yeah, and well, I can say that this much, like, people in the States are pretty much clueless. They really don't pay attention to a whole lot of stuff. They're concerned about themselves for the most part, right? Unless there's something that really affects them. But going back on the story that I told you, there were a lot of prominent people that got caught up in that. There were a lot of prominent people in DC that got caught up in that because DC is really a party city, and Barry, you know that.
I do.
It's a party city, and people down there just do exactly what they want. Forget the
A lot of
consequences.
entitlement. A lot of
Yes,
entitlement. Yeah.
indeed, indeed.
And if you don't, if you're vetted, and if you show that you are not going to just automatically toe the line or whatever, do whatever it takes to get elected, blah 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 blah, you are cut off.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
It,
All right.
But
DC,
these are our
DC,
tax dollars at work.
Yeah, people need to know this stuff, I think, anyway.
yeah, DC is very cultish. It's very cultish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Yeah.
like, these are things that people really don't understand.
Yeah. And very clout oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
And Americans have a collective naivete about their political system. They do not think that their politicians are being blackmailed, which is truly unfortunate because I've come to believe that the checks and balances within our government is blackmail. Our politicians, when you get to the national level, they're either blackmailed or they were willing to make Faustian pacts. And when I ultimately caught up with a blackmail photographer,
Faustian pacts, referring to Faust and making a deal with the devil, is what he's saying. They're either blackmailed or they made a deal with the devil.
when I was researching the Franklin scandal, and I can prove that he was a blackmail photographer. I have police reports on him. I said, how does this work? Because I was still investigating, and I was still trying to get my mind around it. And he said, it's like you're on a yacht, and it's a beautiful yacht, and it's a beautiful day. And you can have anything on this yacht that you want. But if you decide to get off the yacht, the people on the yacht are going to make sure that you drown. And our politicians are on the yacht. And there's zero incentive for them to come out and say that they're being blackmailed.
There we go.
And see that goes exactly to what the story which I was saying. You see, and it goes back to Epstein. You see, he was the blackmailer. You see, he that's the blackmailer.
Or he was the
go-between.
Or he was the go-between from the government who was actually doing the blackmailing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. He's the guy that it's almost like being the economic hitman. You see what I'm saying? This is the guy that's gonna do you. You see, this is the guy that's gonna do you if you don't play ball. You see, we'll get you in a compromising position. So you do play ball. And if you don't, okay, cool. But once you get into where he wants you, okay, now he's got you compromised. And there's really no way out of it because they've got you either some photography or something. Haha, let's take some pictures. We'll do a video. This is funny. It'll just between you and I. Yeah, right. Right. And now, okay, let me send this back to my handler. Hey, look, this is who this is. Oh, really? Okay, well, this is totally illegal. You're messing around with some little kids. I'll wreck your shit. If you don't do exactly what we tell you to do, guess what? You're done. Okay? So don't be surprised. I mean, I'm sure a lot of these politicians, might committing suicide or something like that. I'm serious. It happens because what I'm telling you with the one guy, one of his victims tried to take his own life because he was to be exposed. So that I'm just speaking from experience. So
No, that makes total sense because
it's
it's
pretty
basically
serious.
ruining
It's
their
serious.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right.
I mean,
Go ahead.
They were going under the radar, and then they got caught, and they were threatened with being exposed, and that was their way out, was to off themselves.
yeah. Well, there's a saying: "Do your dirt all by your lonely." If you're gonna do some dirty stuff, do it all by yourself. Don't have anyone else involved with you. You see. And
So,
this is the reason why.
okay, so for a long time, anybody that believed in UFOs or claimed any kind of encounter, the movie Men in Black was based upon an alleged government organization that investigated these incidents. And the next video kind of leads into that. This is our last video, actually. Multiple witnesses from Miami, Florida. Hold on. Multiple witnesses from Miami, Florida are now claiming that it wasn't kids fighting on New Year's Eve, which invited so many cop cars. Rumors are that it was an 8 to 10 foot shadow being / alien that were being shot. Hang on. Were being shot at by people, and others were just running for cover, and that's what attracted this this video.
Todas las unidades de la ciudad de Miami. Esto es en Bayside ahora. ¿Qué hora es? ¿Qué hora es? 9:35 de la noche de hoy, 1 de enero. Frente a...
I mean, there are cop cars lined up all the way back down there. So here's what happened, and I heard this on the 2nd, that there was a report that there were some kind of aliens, some kind of beings at a mall in Miami, and there was a massive police response. And then I hear, no, that's not what it was. There was a teenagers got in a fight in the mall, and were actually shooting fireworks at each other, and it caused a massive panic, and that's why every cop in Southern Florida showed up at the mall. Chris, is this your first time seeing this or hearing about this?
No, in fact, I just heard about it today. And
so what are your thoughts?
All right. So my thoughts are, all right, let's say it is true. There were some aliens in there. They're not going to come out and tell you regardless. They're not going to tell you what happened. All right. So
great point.
Let's just say, so the only way you're going to know is if, through the video cameras inside the mall. You see, some kid was talking about, how he saw it, and he's like, if you would have seen these things, you wouldn't have taken, any video. Everyone was running fast and trying to get up out of there. But, the video recorded inside the mall should tell the story, and that's the only real way you're gonna know exactly what happened. I really don't listen to people's accounts anymore, right? Because people are on drugs, they're crazy, they got all sorts of stuff going on with them. Okay, I want to see the videotape from inside the mall. from different angles, you know, in the times that they say that this occurred. If I see it, then I'll believe it. Until then, it's BS. Is it?
I want to point something out real quick that normally when there are these fights in these malls, um, there's they videotape themselves doing it, and I haven't seen any of that yet. That's missing from that's a key thing that's missing from all
Hmm.
this, and plus the mass police response.
Well, see, I heard that they're, you know, that they um gunshots, right? But they said it were fireworks. I'm like, well, Roman candles don't make that much noise
No,
if you're
they don't make
shooting
gunshot
at, you know,
sounding.
shoot them
No,
off at each other, right?
yeah, yeah,
So,
I mean, if they were,
I
if
don't
there
know
were,
if
there could have been gunshots because the testimony of some of these people is that they were shooting at these things, these aliens, alleged aliens, and so
yeah,
um,
well, like,
you mask that by saying there were fireworks going off, shooting fireworks at each other,
Hmm.
um, because,
yeah,
like you
yeah.
said, if it if
Until you
yeah,
go
you're
there.
not going to believe it until you're not going to believe it till you see it, and also what you said, if it were true, they're not going to tell us, you know.
No, and I don't think there's ever going to be any video come from inside the mall either. I think if there's video, it's already been erased or some governmental agency has it.
I played a video the other night that allegedly showed a portal over CERN, over the super collider in CERN, and that hasn't been refuted yet either.
Right?
So yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if I still have that, or hang on a second. Uh,
I
let
saw
me
that. I
look
saw that.
here.
I saw that too.
Okay, all right. Um, sorry, I accidentally checked my Twitter scroll, and something amusing came. All right. Hey, thank you two for being here.
You're
Um,
welcome.
and Flamingo, you did a great job
Oh, well, thanks for
of
having me.
representing the public. Well, thank you for being here. Okay. Um, we've got Monday night. I've got the National Football Championship, College National Football Championship, and next Wednesday is the last presidential debate, so I'll be covering that. So um, next Friday, Chris, we'll be back on and we'll do
Yep,
the sit rep, and if there's maybe we'll have another guest up with us while we do the sit rep, because
that'd be
it's
cool.
interesting to get some questions from people. So if you're interested in doing that, email me, americandufus@gmail.com. Because we're going to have, the more politics are coming here. The January 15th is coming up. That's when the uh, the first caucuses in Iowa happen. And then we've got the New Hampshire primary after that. And the Supreme Court has agreed to determine whether Donald Trump stays on the ballot or not in Colorado and Maine, which I didn't think that I thought the Supreme Court would try to avoid it at all costs, and maybe they have, and have no choice but to take it up now. But it's going to happen relatively quickly. So a lot of things. There's going to be a lot of things for us to discuss and talk about in the coming days here. And I'll leave you with this. I'll leave
Sounds good,
both of
bro.
you with this. Tomorrow is January the 6th.
Yes, it is.
I already know of one event that's been canceled. Marjorie Taylor Greene was planning an event in Florida to celebrate January 6th. Once the hotel where the event was scheduled, once they found out what she was actually doing, as opposed to what she said the event was going to be, they have canceled. They've canceled her reservations. So, Chris, from a counterterrorism military aspect to close things out tonight, tomorrow being January 6th, is there any reason for any kind of concern?
For tomorrow, no, not
Yeah.
at all.
Okay. I don't have any, but you
Nah,
never know.
nothing.
You remember the Alamo, remember Pearl Harbor, remember the Maine, uh, you know, um, the Patriots. And I understand these people. I don't discredit the people that are ultra patriotic and have to claim they're patriots constantly. I believe that they really do care about the country. I think they're all probably a little bit misguided and maybe a little bit undereducated and don't understand that going to war with each other is a guarantee for the destruction of the United States of America and everything we hold dear on all
For sure,
sides of the
Barry.
aisle.
For sure, Barry.
All right. All right. We'll see you next Friday, Chris.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you then, Barry.
All right.
Thanks,
Unless
Chris.
something, unless something does happen, then we will, we'll hop on here, and if Chris is available, we'll hop on. If something major happens, like we said, North Korea has actively fired missiles at South Korea. We have had everything that's going on in Gaza, which we haven't talked about for a while. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran, explosions in Iran, multiple countries with warships in the Red Sea. A lot could happen at any time, and if something major goes off, we will get on here live and we'll be talking to you about it. Otherwise, we will. I'll see you Wednesday night, and we will have the last of the presidential debates. I believe it's on CNN. So we'll be watching that and commenting and having a watch party, and I hope you'll join us. Please hit the subscribe, hit the like, and leave a comment if you would below if you're watching this other than live. And we thank you wherever you're watching it. Well, you're only watching it on YouTube at the moment, but we will get this out to some other channels. So, again, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next Wednesday. It's a dark world. Do try to be a light. Love you all like chocolate chip cookies.